We left off last time by saying that the I that is observing is not separate from the thing being observed, but that we think the I that is observing is separate from the thing being observed because thought separates the two as a process in time. We've said, while we live our lives thinking that the observer is separate from the observed, our observation and our action is conditioned by the past. What is observed is defined in thought. The observer, too, is put together by thought.
Mm-hmm.
And this same separative structure continues throughout the past, present, and future. But we've said that upon examining this structure, inquiring into its nature, and perceiving the fact that the observer is the observed, then we can begin to observe without the observer.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've said we want to inquire into what is there to observe when we're observing without the observer.
Mm-hmm.
It may be that there's nothing to observe. If there is nothing to observe when we observe without the observer, it means everything is put together by thought.
I see. When you say there's nothing to observe, do you mean there might be no observation? Like there's nothing to look at, as in there's nothing being looked at?
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Perhaps there's observation, but one could never talk about it. Never say, I observed X, Y, and Z. There was ABC.
I see. Which would mean that the things, A, B, C, they're all put together by thought.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. If there's nothing to look at
Mm-hmm.
in this way. Okay.
Or it may be the case that there is that which is not put together by thought, which can be observed when we are observing without the observer.
I see. If there's something to observe.
Mm-hmm. Certain people, when you talk to them about observing without the observer, they say, what do you mean there's no observer? Consciousness is still present. We say, yes, consciousness is still present, but consciousness is no longer separating itself as a separate observer from what it is observing. Rather, consciousness is merely observing itself without separating itself from itself in thought.
I see. There's an understanding that the things that are at play in the field are consciousness and its own contents.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not fragmented itself into consciousness and things outside of consciousness. Okay.
Consciousness no longer says I am separate from the world which I'm conscious of.
Mm-hmm. Because the world that I'm conscious of is in fact informed by me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Or consciousness.
Because it's my experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Consciousness is experiencing the world.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness's experience of the world is not separate from consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So the world that is experienced by consciousness also is not separate from consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So consciousness is observing itself as the experiencer,
Mm-hmm.
the experience, and also what is experienced.
Mm-hmm. Which wouldn't mean that we're unable to take up a different frame of mind and say that I can distinguish between this sensory object and that sensory object, say the wall and the table.
Mm-hmm.
We're fully capable of taking this kind of frame of mind. But currently, we're discussing consciousness not separating itself from the world that it observes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Which doesn't demand the absence of description. There
Mm-hmm.
can still be description of the world,
Mm-hmm.
which is necessary to function in daily life.
Mm-hmm.
If I ask you to pass the salt and you pass the pepper,
Or I just look at you, making no such distinctions in words whatsoever.
You say there is no salt, there is no pepper.
Because that's how I identify it, and it's just me. Or I give you my hand. Yes, for me to pass you the salt, I must make my available descriptions. Mm-hmm.
But consciousness is no longer using its descriptions of the world in relationship to its descriptions of itself to separate itself from the world.
Right.
So it seems like we can begin by investigating the conditions of that consciousness.
I see. Well, that's what there is to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We've said that consciousness is observing itself. But that observation of itself is not taking place in thought.
Mm-hmm.
So consciousness's knowledge of itself is not dependent upon a reflective process.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, we think I'm conscious of myself when I think about myself.
I see. I'm recognizing my consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about myself. In thinking about my consciousness, I see that I am conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
In thinking about my consciousness, I recognize the fact that I'm conscious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But consciousness is aware of itself prior to that recognition.
I see. There's observation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Simply by very nature of being itself, consciousness is aware of itself.
In other words, in observing without an observer, there is still observation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the subject and object of this observation is itself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness says, I exist.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I exist. And in knowing that I exist, because for me to exist is for me to know, I know that I know.
Sure. Consciousness says that I know that I exist. I know that I exist. Not as.
And in
Not
knowing
in
that I
reflection.
exist, I know that I know. Because my knowing is not separate from my existence. For consciousness to exist, is for consciousness to be conscious.
I see.
But consciousness...
So that I exist and that I know that I exist. And then upon reflection of this, I may know that I know that I know that I exist.
No. In the knowing that I exist is knowing of my own knowing. Consciousness says I exist, I know that I know, which doesn't mean three separate things. Consciousness knowing that it knows is knowing that it exists.
I see. Well, presumably I must exist in order to know that I exist. Or in order to know.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps there is existence without knowing, and knowing without knowing that one is knowing.
Perhaps there's existence without knowing. And then perhaps there's knowing without
knowing that one is knowing.
Knowing without knowing that one is knowing. Oh dear.
Like an animal, for instance, perhaps an animal knows without knowing that it knows.
I see. Simply knowing, rather than recognizing the fact that I know that I know.
Not merely recognizing, but being aware of one's own knowing.
Oh, I see. I see. And
recognition happens after the fact.
Knowing without this awareness of its own knowing.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay. Okay. So existing without knowing that I exist, and knowing without knowing, being aware of my knowing. I see.
But consciousness means to be aware that I'm aware.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And therefore, by its own nature, consciousness has knowledge of itself.
I see. And one of the ways that it might structure this knowledge is by the function of the observer.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness says, I exist,
mm-hmm.
I am,
mm-hmm.
I am alive.
Mm-hmm.
And in saying all of this, consciousness thinks that the I that exists, the I that is, and the I that is alive is separate from...
Yeah, perhaps at the initial stage, at the first level, it doesn't say I exist or I am alive. But perhaps it simply says existence, life. And then upon reflection of this fact, it says I am existing, I am living. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the way it characterizes this I, as we've discussed before, might be informed by a certain observer.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I exist apart from other existing things.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps we're on the same page. Okay. All this knowing business is quite confusing.
Yes. Generally, as we've lived, we live thinking that the observer is separate from the observed.
Mm-hmm.
And so accumulate knowledge of the world as if it is separate from our consciousness.
Mm-hmm. It might even attempt to distinguish my consciousness and your consciousness. My world, your world.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
But actually, the fact is, there's just consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're not inquiring into my consciousness
exactly.
or your consciousness. We're inquiring into human consciousness. So generally, we think that the world exists separately from our consciousness, and so accumulate knowledge of it in terms of this thinking. But now we've said that the knowledge we've accumulated of the world, we have to suspend, put aside, in order to observe the world afresh. So now we are observing the world without our conditioned knowledge about it. But consciousness still has knowledge of itself.
I see. The existence, the knowing, the living.
But consciousness's knowledge of itself is also a response of the past.
I see. So in the suspension of our knowledge about the world, we've come to very fundamental, maybe very basic pieces of knowledge. And it seems like the world being consciousness, we're describing the fundamental, basic pieces of knowledge. And what did you just say?
That knowledge, as it exists, is still a response of the past.
Right. Well, this is still knowledge.
Yes.
Right.
Consciousness, being, reflexive self-awareness, each moment of consciousness exists in relationship to the previous moment of consciousness. So there's constant modification of that knowledge structure, but always in response to the past. But so far as we've lived our life generally, that knowledge structure has been prejudiced by thinking consciousness is separate from the world. So consciousness's experience of itself, its knowledge of itself, also exists in separation. But in observing without the observer, we are beginning to see the irrelevance of that accumulated knowledge. Because consciousness is no longer distinguishing itself from the world. So this center of our consciousness, these basic pieces of knowledge, life, existence, being, are being emptied out.
I see. Emptied out in the sense that they are pieces of knowledge relevant to consciousness basically may in fact not be the case.
This knowledge as it exists
is
no longer relevant.
Things that I have been taking, or things that consciousness has been taking relatively as granted for maybe its entire existence is being put to question.
Not merely taken for granted consciously, but also foundational unconsciously. To the very way of experiencing and being. It's not a matter of will. But because that knowledge has been based on distinction, and that distinction is no longer being made, consciousness says the past knowledge is no longer relevant to the present situation. So the past knowledge is being emptied out. So it seems that when we're observing without the observer, consciousness is moving away from its old condition based in separation, self-will, is moving away from that condition to another condition. Not that consciousness says, I know where I'm going, but rather, I'm going somewhere I haven't been before.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I know where I have been.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This center of consciousness is an egoic center. So consciousness is emptying out its own egoic center.
I see. My very sense of life being in existence. Previously fundamental to my understanding of consciousness and the world. Mm-hmm. Maybe how I would have defined myself upon questioning, but seeing that it comes from the past, separate from me, there's a movement away from it,
Mm-hmm.
which you're describing as an emptying out. Mm-hmm. I see, it's quite liberating. It's freeing. I'm no longer defined by my past, by who I think I was, or who I think others saw me as.
Even what I experience myself to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's beginning to be a change in the condition of that consciousness at this most basic, essential, fundamental level.
Mm-hmm.
So we've said consciousness is essentially self-consciousness. And when it is observing itself without an observer, it's emptying out its own essential content. Central content.
I see. The observer and the things that define it are being emptied out.
So emptying out not only the center, also the periphery. Not only knowledge of the observer, but also knowledge of the observed.
I see. I see. I see. As I shake up the middle, I'm shaking up the outside as well. I see. I see. If in fact I don't know who I am, then in fact I don't know what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps we might also take up in this connection fundamental experiences of consciousness, being time and also space.
I see. Closely tied to my fundamental experiences of life being in existence, or living in space, my experiences in time. Mm-hmm.
When consciousness experiences itself as distinct from the world, as a separate observer,
Mm-hmm.
consciousness experiences itself as moving through the world in time. At a present moment,
Mm-hmm.
separated by an interval from the past, and separated by another interval from the future.
Mm-hmm.
Intervals either very large or very small.
Mm-hmm.
But we've said that this experienced threefold division of time as past, present, and future is a movement of thought.
Mm-hmm.
The past, as experienced, exists in memory.
Right, by the observer who is maintaining continuity throughout the threefold. Mm-hmm.
Past experience, modified as the present,
Right.
what is observed, and then extending itself into the future. What I will be observing.
Right. So that our recognition of a present moment is actually seen as the past, and our projections about the future are actually garnered from the past as well. Mm-hmm.
So observing without the observer, we don't have this experience of psychological time. Because we observe the fact that all time is now.
I see. The observer being the observed, there's no continuity through the threefold anymore. Mm-hmm.
Perceiving the fact that the present, the past, and the future exist now, that movement of the past from the present no longer extends itself into the future.
Mm-hmm.
So the experience of now has a quality of timelessness.
Oh, I see. Timelessness. Mm-hmm.
Because involved in that is the negation of that movement of time.
Mm-hmm. Which is typically how we understand time in the first place. Mm-hmm.
So when consciousness experiences itself without an observer, that consciousness experiences itself as timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Not because consciousness is eternal, not because
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
consciousness doesn't take place in time, but because when consciousness is no longer separating itself as a separate observer, it has no standard against which to measure its own changes.
Mm-hmm.
So it experiences itself timelessly.
There isn't a marker to mark the passage of time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If one imagines infinitely oscillating variable, marked, unmarked, marked, unmarked, unmarked, into perpetuity, the oscillation itself appears timeless.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously oscillation means time.
There's a back and forth. Mm-hmm.
So although consciousness takes place in time, consciousness means time, consciousness experiences itself timelessly.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps in that, consciousness can experience something which is timeless.
I see. Untouched by psychological time.
Unmarked by impermanence, transiency.
Right. Not a definitive beginning and ending.
Without ordinary sense of change.
I see. And the ordinary sense of change would be, look at this particular feature which is different from here and there. But perhaps like getting into the middle of this ordinary sense of change. How did it get from here to there? Observing this space.
And is there something that doesn't move from here to there?
Right.
But always remains what it is?
But not what it is.
Yes. But still always fresh.
Dynamic.
New.
Right.
Original.
Not static.
Yes. Then also there's the experience of space.
Right.
As we experience space in thought, space is experienced as the distance between the observer and the observed.
I see. Whatever point the observer may occupy. Right. Whatever one might designate as here. Right. Okay.
I am over here looking at something over there.
Right. Or even if one says, here is this thing, and from here, there's that thing. The point the observer is occupying is actually here. And the distance is from here to there.
Could the observer not be occupying a third position? I have primary object here, secondary object there, and then I am the reference point for both?
Very well.
Perhaps when I mean here in this sense, I mean more colloquially. But if one wants to say strictly, here means where I am. Then here is location of the observer.
Yeah. Okay.
Which doesn't have to be
yes
in and around the body.
Right. Well, this is the point I was trying to make. But, but your meaning was that the observer is the reference point. Yes.
But you're saying that reference point does not need to be in and around
the body.
The body.
Yeah.
Very interesting. But when thought is no longer separating an observer from the observed, space is not experienced as distance from here to there.
I see. I have no standard by which to measure it anymore. I don't know how long this distance is.
There's just space.
An expanse. However big or small.
Yes.
But that it is big or small would be relative to a different reference point, you see. And so
and when there is such an experience of space without measurement, without comparison, perhaps there can be an inquiry into whether there's something which is not located in that space.
I see. Are you saying that we could observe something that is not in a measurable space?
Mm-hmm.
Or not measurable, but a measured space, perhaps?
Which is neither here nor there.
Uh-huh.
Not located.
Right.
Not particular.
Right. And so perhaps an observation of something that is timeless and spaceless. It doesn't occur at this time or that time, and it's not located at this location or that location.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Perhaps in observing without the observer, there can be observation of something unlimited.
Hold on there, buddy. Perhaps we mean not limited by thought.
Not that the experience will be unlimited. Or what is experienced is unlimited, because it's still an experience.
Right.
It's still part of my consciousness.
Right. Well, I'm partly jesting, but when you say unlimited, perhaps there's an importance to point out, like, well, what is the limit that it's
Quite.
that's being surpassed?
Yes,
That's
yes.
being overcome.
Unlimited by our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Our thinking, which is basically conditioned by space and time.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we have more to say on the subject of consciousness, perhaps we can take up investigating whether there is not such content next time.
I see. Might there be content which is timeless and spaceless?
Mm-hmm.
Very well.